Compliments of the season, everyone. Good morning. I'm Chamberlain. So welcome to Sunrise Daily.
You know, this morning, just thinking about our name, Sunrise Daily, I realized that indeed, the sun rises daily. And for every issue, every time that the sun rises, there are issues to discuss. So welcome, Ayo Makinde.
Because I thought, thinking about a name. I didn't think about my name, actually, because I know my name.
Oh, really? Well, you didn't think about it.
There you go. Well, yes, indeed, it's Christmas Eve, and I know to a lot of people, it doesn't feel like that. You're not alone. Globally, it's the same thing. But, you know, the thing is, you have to do what you can. You have to stay alive because there'll be so many other Christmases, you know, as it were. So you just have to, look, it's not, I still see people caught up in that frenzy, just trying to go grab a couple of things here and there. Look, there are different components to some of these celebrations,
Absolutely.
but I get it when people are used to, you know, a straight-jacketed way of going about this kind of things. But families can converge. Friends, groups. Okay, let me use the word groups. Can converge. Can't afford to converge as it used to be because, of course, you know that the world is battling this pandemic. We're just trying to ensure that people do what they can to keep themselves safe. The controversy is notwithstanding anyway, but the roads today, unlike previously, you see a lot of, you know, there's so much traffic, but it still is, but not as it used to be. Because I thought that, you know, when they announced all those restrictions, hey, who knows, when you hit the roads, you just didn't know what to expect.
Chamberlain, you are in for a surprise this morning.
Oh, dear.
from you know, one of our guests.
Oh, wow.
Because some of the things that I perceive are going to hear about when it comes to this road thing.
Boy.
We thought, you know, that once there is a lockdown, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? But from what I'm hearing, from what I'm sensing, we're in for a surprise, today. But
So not a lot has changed, though.
Most certainly. But you know, the interesting thing about the roads thing that you're talking about is it takes even longer these days to get to wherever it is that you're going because of the nature of the roads. I mean,
at least it's not because of Christmas Day.
It's not because of Christmas Day. But these things do happen. You know, it's just I was on the show, right, when, you know, the last mile chief was saying that there are so many expired roads in Lagos. I was shocked because I didn't even know roads expired. Many people didn't know that, but that's exactly, you know, what we have on our hands now. If we know all of those things, it will probably be good for us to factor in some of these, you know, suggestions that you are making that, you know, we can restrict our movements and all those things, but not for those whose culture it is to travel and all of that. Some are traveling today. Guess what? Some are traveling first flight tomorrow. Whether by road or by air or by whatever means, people still travel.
Speaking about travel, it's been chaotic, nightmarish experience for those who are traveling by air. What they experience at the airports, with the airlines, how they conduct themselves, how the officials conduct themselves. If you just go over different platforms, you just see, wow, there's a litany of complaints in terms of what is going on this period.
You're provoking something that you are not aware of. So let me just come out with it. I had reason to travel from Abuja to Lagos, and I stayed at the airport from 2 p.m. until 10 p.m. when my aircraft began to taxi. Guess what? I saw a signpost right there at the airport. What does it say? If you have, you know, any complaints, your flight is delayed. There is customers, passenger bill of rights and all of that. You know, complain to so. And I looked around. There was no desk, no indicator of to whom I could complain. And there I was. Of course, the only place I could complain was Twitter. So I just ranted on Twitter with a couple of tweets and all. But, you know, the kind of complaints that we get and how we are able to mitigate those challenges that people have, I think that is essentially what customer care or customer service is about. Whose responsibility is it? Is it the NCAA? Is it the FAA? Well, that notice, by the way, was put there by the FAA. And question is, where is that place at the departure point? Because if you are going to have complaints about delayed flight, it should be at your departure, right? But there isn't any such desk. What's wrong with us coming up with something like that?
Well, customer care in this part of the world, I can imagine the kind of complaints that Consumer Council will be going through
FCCPC.
on a regular basis, because here, it just appears strange to us. In fact, sometimes if you have a product, you try to get to the consumer care, they appear as surprised as you are. Because they themselves don't know how to cut the product or what happens.
And
There's nothing they could do.
All
about
you
it.
say in Chamberlain is for the regulated environments. The supermarkets where you can take the goods back, the airports, bus parks that are regulated and all. How about those ones that are unregulated?
Oh, boy.
How about those online services that you pay for it and you wait? So many things. But maybe this that you're saying, and by the way, talking about the FCCPC, I don't even know how they're going to begin to manage online transactions in the year ahead, because that definitely has increased. So how are they going to verify consumer protection at that point?
That's the future.
Well, I guess their job is cut off for them.
When people say education is expensive, you just tell them, well, try ignorance.
Yeah.
Because it's a headache. And good to see yesterday, ASUU eventually called off, that long-drawn strike. Wow, it was something that
of course, that there's a caveat to it.
Yeah. So, in fact, some of the dailies, of course, expected they were going to reflect on that. So they did this morning, and we'll start with Daily Trust. They have a huge part of what transpired yesterday with ASUU, that big announcement between themselves and the federal government as to what to expect moving forward. But they will be having their Congress today. So after their Congress, then they can begin to speak and talk about different modalities. But if you see what the Daily Trust leads with this morning, ASUU wasted 58 weeks on strike under Buhari. That is a lot. Do you know how many programs could have been completed in 58 weeks?
You mean how many programs were completed within those 58 weeks?
In other parts of the world.
In other parts of the world, for those schools who are online, even for some private schools in Nigeria.
Do you know how much this could have cost people?
How much it has cost in terms of economic resources, right? How about the investment of the time and what it would have produced for us in the future? The people whose lives have been stalemated for this number of weeks, for God's sake, I don't know what it has cost them in the future. I have no idea what it has cost them in the future. It is part of what is responsible, maybe remotely, for the NSAS thing. Whether we want to look at it that way or not, let government do what government is expected to do part-time. Well, gratifying to know that Dr. Chris Ngige has promised that he would ensure we never go back to the time where ASUU would, go on strike, willy-nilly. But government has to play their part. So.
But we also need to remember that this kind of comments have been made before by previous ministers of education. In fact, some of the ministers of education we had before several years ago were professors. They came from the academia. And then it wasn't any better. I mean, the stats are out there, so you just need to go ahead and check it out.
The only thing that tells me what you just said now, as true and slapping as it is, what it tells me is that we do not have a system that helps us to continue to process things. No continuity. One minister comes and another minister comes and he jettisons what the previous one has done and continues it. That's the kind of trajectory we've had over the years.
Well, speaking about cost, they say time is money and time is spent. So if we look at it in that way, who knows if we could have done things differently.
My point exactly.
And then you see conditionally suspend latest strike. Lecturers don't deserve 9-month pay. Ex-VC. Okay, well, he's ex-VC. So he could say that. If it was a subsistent VC, I'm not sure he'll be of the same view. Or was it even of the same view while he was VC? Well, you need to check it out and find out. Well, give varsities autonomy. Dons. But if you're going to give them autonomy, financial autonomy inclusive, they've got to run their things, earn their money, not rely on government for any of such things.
I think we're actually losing the essence of what universities are supposed to do. Someone was telling me, where we were having a conversation, that look, universities are supposed to be like experimental labs for national development. So they are supposed to be able to come up with policies that we can use and try them out and see whether or not they work and all of that. But if we treat them the way we have been treating them over the past 40 years or so.
Yeah, I'm speaking about the roads. 15 dead, 58 injured in Niger, Kaduna road crashes. That's a very sad one. And then you see a huge picture there. Scene of an accident involving a petrol tanker at Jeba in Moro local government area of Kwara State yesterday. So we'll hope to find out, look, what really are the causative factors to some of this? According to the stats that we'll see, maybe that could help. You never know.
Yeah.
That's Daily Trust today.
Nigerian News Direct is also talking about the ASUU code of strike. ASUU conditionally suspends 9-month-old strike. VC loads ASUU and FG. The story is on page 2. Well, you would be interested in this one. NIMC, that's NIMC, debunks claim on breach of database. Thank you for doing that, but please ensure it's not true indeed. There is no breach let's be sure that indeed it is true. There be enough security. Chamberlain, I'm suspecting the way you're...
I didn't breach it. I'm not the one responsible, so you can't suspect me in this case. Come on.
Right above the nameplate, and a number of people have complained about this one. Well, you won't. Chamberlain won't complain about this one. Unitide, CBN to investigate dearth of money in ATMs. That story is on page 40. You go to your ATM, you try to withdraw, temporarily unable to dispense cash. At this time,
Oh boy.
Christmas Eve, don't just investigate, just do something about it. We don't want to know what's responsible for that one. But that's what we have on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. So many others there, but let's leave it there for that one.
Well, look at Vanguard next. FG tracking new type of coronavirus in Nigeria. Says Nigerians will get COVID vaccine free. Well, you heard that yesterday. Strain traced to South Africa. Again, FCT shuts bars, clubs, others. Limits wedding guests to 50. Kwara imposes partial lockdown. Ondo cancels crossover service. Ekiti imposes new restrictions, bans nightclubs, vigils. Governor Abiodun suspends carnivals, crossover
service.
Crossover gatherings. That's Governor Abiodun suspends carnivals, crossover gatherings. So different states are coming up with different methods and strategies to see what it is they can do, how. Maybe Lagos will be talking about this much later today in terms of what to do, what to expect. The PTF on COVID, they say that much, that look, we'll give the guidelines, but we'll work with the states. I think they said they were happy with the kind of feedback they were getting from the states. Maybe not with that of Kogi, but who knows. Insecurity, it's above this one here. Ondo government to recruit more men into Amotekun, so you might just look out for that if you like to.
For what? The employment or the...
Whichever part that you like to look into. You know, people look for different things from different issues. So, and it's a free world, they can do that. Gridlock, FG to deploy 200 security personnel to Tinkan Apapa ports. 200 security personnel. So back at the trenches, huh?
We had this convo yesterday, The
I issue they said it wasn't easy. It was a piece of cake.
The chairman, he says his outgoing chairman of the presidential task force on that congestion was saying, look, there is no gridlock along the highway. It was on our program, one of our sister programs here. There is no gridlock on the highway, but the gridlocks are within the ports. Okay, so if that is the case, the question that I charged him with was, how there is no way the gridlock within the ports is not going to spill over to the streets if you don't take care of whatever the issues are on the inside. Now, according to him, there are more than 30 organizations who have different tasks within the ports. Fine. So, is there a central coordinating body that is supposed to ensure that we do not have those congestions within the port so that the spillover does not rubbish and nullify or demean all the successes that, he is claiming that they have been able to have. So if the federal government is having to deploy 200 personnel, again, for that purpose, the question we want to ask is, what's going to be their task? What's going to be their responsibility?
Well, the 200 of them will find out soon. Then at the bottom strip, other unions threaten hell as ASUU ends strike. We won't resume till federal government corrects imbalance in earned allowances. Non-teaching varsity staff threaten. It appears government doesn't want peace. SANU. Government shield away from its risk. I go again. Government. Is this supposed to be? Government shied away from its responsibility. That's from NAPTAN. And then NANS clamors for students' involvement in future negotiations.
Negotiation of what?
Well. I don't know. I'm just wondering. Well, maybe you need to read it and put it in proper context, because I'm not sure they want to be part of this negotiating for the earned allowances of lecturers. Is that could have been maybe?
That's what I'm saying. What's their stake in it? You want to know how much a lecturer is collecting so that you can know how much to ask him to work for you? I don't get it.
I don't know what
we'll find out in the
details.
The details.
What kind of involvement are they seeking? Perhaps when you get to the story, you'll see that. Take a look at what is on the back page. Wow, CAF Champions League, not a good one here. Enyimba go down 3-0 at Al Merrek. What's going on with all Enyimba? I mean, it appears as though after Ojita Kalu left Enyimba, they seem to have become a shadow of themselves. They were high flying at that time.
Very, very.
So you see why we always say, look, if certain structures were put in place, it could run our clubs, teams, the league.
Chamberlain, the issue has not always been that of structures. It's that of sustainability. It's that of sustaining the systems. Well, don't even let me go in this trajectory, because those who knew what football was in Nigeria in the 80s will tell you we had a solid structure in the 70s, into the 80s, even into the early 90s. What happened to those structures? So it's not the structures, if you ask me. It's sustaining them to ensure that whatever happens, that structure is still functional. It is the same Nigeria that won the very first under-17, World Cup. It was in 1987. Where is that, that team now? But where is that structure that created that team now?
I think it's a combination of factors. The structure, yes, but people, that structure is peopled by people.
My point.
So the kind of people who man and run those places.
People run structures. So no matter how strong a structure is, it is dependent on the people to ensure that the system works.
Yeah, but if you look at some of the federations, look at what they fight for. The kind of things they fight for. Even you, as an independent person, if you, or a corporate body, you want to go in there and perhaps sponsor the leagues or sponsor any, whatever it is, you will have some tales to tell, because look, the way some of them come down at you, this is what really happens. As if, look, it's
a whole lot, no doubt. Look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and what you will find there might scare you a little bit. 170 million Nigerians living in dirty environment. It's a study, and the number of cities are right there on the front page. Abuja, Akwa Ibom emerge cleanest cities in Nigeria.
Nice.
Lagos, Oyo, Abuja operate sanitary landfills in waste management. Yep. But you probably want to find out which cities are the dirtiest in Nigeria. It's not on the front page. You'll find that on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. So many things that you want to look at, really. So many things you want to look at. How robbers killed co-member on Abuja Kaduna Road, so according to the NYSC. COVID-19, Ondo, Ogun cancel crossover services, face masks mandatory in Edo, and a slew of other sub-headlines right there on the front page. Now, we've been talking about the 1999 Constitution. Afe on Thursday says NAS has the powers to replace the 1999 Constitution. The details are on the back page of the Nigerian Tribune.
We'll take a look at The Guardian next. Investors skeptical of banks' growth. Wow, has it come to this? I mean, you remember they always announce huge profits. Profit after tax, all of those things. You see them huge, they always gain. And now, investors skeptical of banks' growth. Profits shrink in third quarter. Shares selling on discount in stock market. Shareholders task government on business environment. Well, the other day, I think it was the business environment that said the environment was really harsh and bleak. Now, you see shareholders tasking government on business environments. Is a lot right there for you to see. Profs count losses as ASUU suspends 9-month strike. So, there you go. Several other stories associated with that one here this morning. Well, that is The Guardian today.
Well, the blueprint is taking off from where the Guardian newspaper stops this morning. Fresh crisis brews. Okay, well, first of all, there's a rider. As ASUU calls of strike, fresh crisis brews, SANU, NAAT reject deal. What's that all about? The details are on the inside pages, page 6 to be specific.
Reject deal.
One union can't have 75%, while 3 others take 25%. Will monitor FG's compliance. That's according to Varsity teachers. Let's be part of future negotiations. That's according to Nance. So many things to look at there on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper this morning, and so many other things there. Kankara boys, I dialogue with repentant bandits. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Repentant bandits.
Yeah. Gloomy Christmas as FG declares 25, 28, December 25 and 28, and 1st January public holidays. COVID-19 really dealt us deadly blow, should say. That's according to Nigerians. That's the blueprint this morning.
Well, look at Daily Times. ASUU returning to classes conditionally. So for all those unions who are threatened, some say hell, fire and brimstone. Well, I think the minister says they will ensure that there will be no strike, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there you go. That's what you qualify here. So that's Daily Times this morning.
And the Daily Independent. Suspended strike. Stakeholders hail ASUU, task FG on agreed conditions. We may resume action if FG reneges. That's according to Ogunyemi, of course, he is the ASUU president. So many other things that you want to look at right there on the front page. 540 billion naira on COVID-19 vaccines, misplaced priority. Ascribed to Yaya Bello, says Nigeria can't afford another lockdown amid recession. Of course, you had that interview here yesterday on Sunrise Daily. But that story you'll find on page 4 of the Daily Independent this morning.
So there you go. That is a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Yes, it's Christmas Eve. What are you doing? Where are you? Hey, you can. Well, hey, have we checked our leadership? Did we?
No, we haven't actually.
How can we forget that?
Well, leadership is.
Don't they? They do. Don't they?
Well, leadership.
There's something there.
Well, there has to be. Well, leadership is only just more interested in whether or not we're going to pay for COVID-19 vaccines. Nigerians won't pay for COVID-19 vaccines.
Won't pay?
Won't pay.
Won't. Oh, nice.
That's that's the front page of the leadership.
Well, we'll have a little more conversation and information and updates on that subject matter today as we progress. So give us a moment. We will be right back. Welcome back. Yes, we've got Steve Nwosu here. He's the publisher of the Nigerian Express. Compliments of the season to you.
Same
today.
to you, bro. We still have to be happy somehow.
Oh, yeah. You know, that's how we started. I said, look, much as it may not necessarily feel that way, that is the season again.
Maybe you're already assuming that it doesn't feel that way for him.
No. I mean, largely. A lot of people don't feel the environment, of course, COVID and things like that. So it's a little...
I wish it could be postponed. If it's something we could postpone, we should just postpone it.
But that means it doesn't feel like Christmas for you as well?
No, of course, it's Christmas. Yeah. You hear music, people are doing their trees and all that. But there are all those things that make Christmas Christmas. They are
Such
just
as?
not in place.
Such as?
I mean, when my old man said, when you're somewhere and picking bills in about 3-4 places, then you know you're a man. When you're suddenly not picking those bills, something is going wrong, definitely. So, and there's a bottom line that is missing.
But how do you think students will feel at this point in time when, having heard that announcement from ASUU, that yes, indeed, they've suspended the strike, so it's up to the Senate of those universities now and the federal government to determine when the students will come back to school?
First of all, there was excitement because I have a daughter who is at home, who is a final year student waiting to go to school. So there's excitement, but I'm also not really as excited because some sensible governors have already said no schools, no nothing till 18th of January. So at least you know that there will be some, let's watch how this COVID is going. It's not just enough now to say schools reopen. There is a COVID in the mix that we've got to find a way to live with. And it's nice they're calling up the strike. It's nice to hear that after almost losing a whole calendar, a whole year, about 9 months or 8 on it, and they are going to go back to school. I just pray that for me, I never really always blame us on stuff like this. It's been government, and it's not just a Buhari thing. It's been government right from as long as I've been following it. Even this democracy of Obasanjo, Jonathan, you enter into it. If you look at some of the things they are fighting over, things that go back as far as 2002, you have an agreement. These people agree, call off the strike, and then you don't do any of those things again. And then you resort to emotional blackmail each time they demand for it. But we look at our schools are in a mess. Who is going to fight? It's not all these people that everybody has his child in some Ivy League school, some school, including some schools that we didn't initially recognize as certificates in Nigeria before. We are now where we are paying an arm and a leg to get our children to, because everybody's child is outside. Those that are not outside are in the private schools, yeah? And those private schools, if you have a child in a private university here now, you're thinking of the minimum, you'll be looking at about 1.2, 1.3 per annum. But some go as high as 2 point something per annum just for a student in school. How much are you earning? Many of us haven't earned a thing since maybe, let's say, March.
Wow. I mean, there's going to be several other considerations, you know, when students get back to school. But when, you know, Ayo did say that, quoting the Minister of Labour, saying he will ensure that this doesn't happen again, ASUU doesn't, they're going to go back to strike. And you sit back and just wonder, well, yes, previous ministers, you expected that from previous ministers several years ago. Yeah. So when he then says this, and then you see the other union, SANU, NASU, claiming that ASUU is getting 75%, so that won't work for them. You just, look, where
you say, I so much wish I can believe Senator Ngige, Dr. Chris Ngige on this. It's actually not, he will feel in his mind that, yes, in his heart of hearts, that we shouldn't get back here again. But the truth is that how much money did we put to education in the budget? The money we have in the budget for education, even if we give all of it to ASUU, is not even enough to say we will not have enough of this again, because it's what percentage of our budget goes to education. The way we rate education is the problem. You go there, and it's not even just the allocation. It's how much that even gets released at the end of the day. You can approve tens of billions, hundreds of billions, but how much of it gets released at the end of the year? What you approved is not, it's just scratching what's the problem, and yet you don't release all of it before the end of the year. I just pray they're able to. Yes, you can. It's not like government is. Yes, they've always been unrealistic about some of these things, but then now it's worsened by crippling in a portrait economy.
You know, there are so many things that a number of people would also, because I'm just looking at a number of things here, there are so many things that a number of people will always point to us, the Nigerians, as our responsibility in all of these. Would you even say that generally we're paying attention to things we ought to pay attention to? Would you even say that whether it's the minister or the senator or the House of Representative member or House of Assembly member, we're even taking that people to task enough, you know, to holding them to account enough? Do you think there are enough stringent processes by which people can hold their employed government officials? I mean, when I say employed,
elected officials,
we employed them. Elected, yes, but we employed them. They are employed by the people. Do you think we have enough structures or information or electoral know-how to even hold them to account whenever they seem to be erring?
Begin from the president. You elect a president.
Employ, please use the word employ.
You employ a president, thank you, because we're actually the employers, they are employees. You employ a president, and then you turn around, instead of calling him Mr. President, everybody calls him Baba, right from Obasanjo. So that Baba already puts you in a position of he's a master, he's your father. You lead him, and he's not. And father in the African setting is not like you discuss with your father. He passes instruction, whatever he wants is the way. So we are in a country where somebody gets up in the National Assembly and says, I think we should serve an impeachment notice on this president. And the person is the one now battling for his own survival. That is where you have the problem, because you now have somebody that, even that issue of to checkmate the excesses of the executive, you can't do it, because the moment you move to do it, it's trouble for you. And you will never get out of that trouble until. Perhaps that's our problem.
Perhaps the problem is, maybe we shoot too high. There are lower ones. There is the chairman of the local government. There is the councillor. There is the member of the House of Assembly. There is the governor. There is the member of the House of Representatives. There is the senator. Before we go as far as the National Assembly,
everybody is a lord of the manor on his own, at his own level.
So that's why I'm asking: do we have enough structures to help us, the people, take charge of the work we give to these people, to hold them to account?
The structures are there. I keep saying it. The structures are there. It's just that how willing are we? We have a culture where we don't want to. We worship the people in power, basically. So even the struggle, the thing, you have a local government chairman. He's the lord of the manor there. Anything that happens, he just dispenses favors. He doesn't do nobody. If you move to call him to order, you are kind of seen as, how do I say, a rebel, an opposition element that must be crushed. Everybody is, yes, sir, and whatever he does is the way. The governor, the same thing. The states hold most of what is going to the local government, no matter how, what you say is what's it called, that they get their funding direct from the source and all that. Somehow they manage to tie the local governments to the state government. So you as a local government chairman, you can't do anything that the governor doesn't want you to do.
So are we then?
And then you as a governor, there are things, apart from you just get a few instances where some governors just say, look, I'm going this way, and then somehow they are perceived as maybe kind of either opposition. You see somebody like Wike putting his feet down on certain things. It's only, though you might not like everything he does, only people that are stubborn that can function in this kind of setup. If you say, let's cooperate with this state government, and they'll just take you and your people for a ride.
Let me speak to your constituency, our constituency, which is the media. One of the issues that I've always been concerned about is the quality of communication that goes from the government to the governed.
Yeah.
And the kind of feedback that they get back through whatever means that they can. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whichever way they can, and at any opportunity that people have to ventilate, when you look at that communication, I don't know, can we really call it communication or just exchange of words? Because sometimes, when you hear something from, governments to the people, you're wondering whether or not the people are getting it. And then when people are responding to what they see of government, when government says we have done this and the kind of responses people get, would you say that there is communication?
There is the communication, there is communication, but it's not as much as anybody will want. One, because there is, let's face it, we are in the media, the quality of some of the things we dish out leave a little to be desired. But the truth is that it's also a function of what we're getting. You have an information and you have something you need to cross-check, and you are being passed from this. I can't speak on that. Is this when you get this other minister? You probably get somebody that you think should be able to at least give you an insight into some of these things. And when you say, no, when I get the Minister of Defense is the best person in the position to that, you put the Minister of Defense, okay, I don't have the details, but if the Chief of Army Staff was there, and that is how the buck is passed. The quality of information never goes. And then, like the Minister of State for Petroleum said 2 nights ago, that's Chief Temipre Shiva, he said that the country has gotten to such a position that the people don't believe what they hear from the government. They look forward to the media to give them the authentic information. But when you as government now comes and demonizes the media, anything the media says, you've redefined fake news to mean anything that doesn't favor you is fake news. And no matter how true, once it doesn't favor you, it's fake news, it's hate speech, it's all that. So once you start that, you don't give the media, and the media will work on information, will work without information. And I always had a laugh when they were doing the, the freedom of speech thing, and there was freedom of information bill, and they were saying, now the media, you'll be forced to go and confirm information. We say, it's actually you, the government, that need this freedom of information than we, the media. If 4 or 5 politicians sit here now and have a meeting, you can be sure that if I'm interested in what even if they did it inside a bunker, if I'm interested in it, 1, 2, 3 calls, you will get the details of what they said there. And I will use it. And I'm not bound because you've denied me that information. It will get out somehow. So we can always get information. We've been in this country, it might not be ethical, where people stole files and got all the information you think you have been hiding. So when you're hiding this information, we can get it. And then when people get it, it now means your own part of the story might never be there. It's subject to whatever interpretation they give it and pass out there. And that is a problem we have. And then the genuine media people that do these things, you deliberately want to squeeze life out of them. The same government people go to encourage some of all kinds of handset journalists. Even in the online thing, the world is going online. They are reputable online persons, known journalists doing this online thing. You sidetrack them and then be passing out information to all these funny people who have no address, who have no scruples, no training, no anything. And when they just throw it and then misinterpret it, and we're in a generation where people don't read deep. They just read 1 paragraph, 2, and headline, and then they can write a whole page of what they feel inside, not what you have said. So that's the situation.
One other key thing that borders on some of these things you highlighted is security.
Yeah.
Now I remember this same government, first term, different ministers, some of them did say, well, we don't know who these people are. They come from different parts of the country. They come from West Africa. They're armed. They're killing farmers. They're attacking farmers. So there's been different spin.
Yeah.
Now they refer to them as bandits.
Yeah.
So what's your understanding of what is going on? Or who the people are?
I don't want to play the Donald Trump here by bringing you all kinds of what they call conspiracy theories and all that. But there's no country, from my perspective, that fights security, that wants to fight security and leaves its borders unpoliced, not properly policed. we naturally have a porous border. And then you as a policy now chose the border open. Don't ask for this. Our brothers in West Africa come and you will take, even they don't need no visa entry. People just enter like, and you know we are bordered by the new base of terrorism now. Maghreb and West Africa, or Northern West Africa, they are just where all the people displaced from, not everywhere. That's where they are. The world is focusing on it. You that share boundaries with this person, you now through your borders open, and they are coming in. And then you say, yes, there's nothing. Countries have affinities. You at one time, Belgium and Holland were in the same country. In Belgium, they speak a variant of French.
Yeah.
In what is it called, Switzerland, they speak a German there,
There's
French
Italian,
there,
French.
and then Austria is actually a Germanic state. They speak German. So you can, and they are all the same. These people are just places, but they are independent countries. And the world has gone beyond that. Protect your borders. You can have all manner of cooperation with the people, not just throw it open as if you're trying to create one big mega country that all kinds of people are free, and then you are not checking the quality of people that's coming in. That's our problem. So the people coming in, you say I think it was on channels that I watched the governor of was he Bauchi once telling you that Nigeria is home to every Fulani. Yeah. And that and all that. Now we have Nigerian Fulanis who are settled, who are peaceful, who are everything, we have mixed, we've gone to school with everything. Yeah. They are cool with us. And then you don't, suddenly people come infiltrating, you start infiltrating and you say they are free to come in because Nigeria is also their country. Where is that done? And then suddenly a governor takes money to meet some terrorists in the bush, gives them to beg them, please don't come and terrorize us again. Who does that? Yes, people negotiate with terrorists and find some kind of thing. You know the mess when Obama and co, they said they moved 400 million with the USD and all that. But you move this money, the guys use it, but get themselves better, more sophisticated weapon and come back. Another governor goes and takes has a photo up with the terrorist leader and everything. And the next time they stop rustling animals, they start rustling human beings, they start rustling students. Before it was they will bring trailer and pack cows. Now they bring trailer and pack children. And then you are still in all this negotiation. Things are happening, we don't even know, as if there is a deliberate silence or there is another agenda you're pursuing with this. So that's why people are alleging ethnic cleansing, people are alleging religious war, religious intolerance. And when Britain, Trump puts you on some of these lists, you start complaining. But it's all these little things. People are welcome, our neighbors are welcome. But for goodness sake, let us control who and who comes in, because the people coming in are some of the most undesirable elements on earth. They are coming in from Mali, they are coming in from Burkina Faso, they are coming in from Niger, all this, and you are so free letting them in. That's where we have it.
Some other issue a number of people might be looking at now is, wait, in all of this that you have said so far, have you considered the ECOWAS protocol?
Look, if there's an ECOWAS protocol, why is Brexit and co still dragging? There are certain things. Yes, it's ECOWAS, but the first
but why
law.
are they coming here? Why
but the
the
first law in nature is self-preservation. You have to preserve yourself. Sometimes you have ECOWAS protocol. Somebody will say, "No, this is not working for us. Let's negotiate it." You put a slammer and block, check everything, and don't we close? But didn't we ECOWAS protocol? Why did we close border to
the land border?
But it wasn't there any ECOWAS protocol.
On that border thing again, something I have continued to talk about concerning it with everyone who cares to listen. A lot of times people will say we have very, very porous borders. Granted,
yeah.
But we have border communities.
Yes.
We should be having conversations with those border communities to ensure that they buy into the protective elements of the national interest that you are talking about now. What kind of conversations should we be having with them?
That is, if many of those living around those border communities see government on our side as working for their interests. Sometime in the 90s, we used to go towards all those, the old Sadana province, game, all those places that have been run over by Boko Haram now, somewhere in Nigeria, part of Taraba, Adamawa, Borno, Yobe. Then there were communities that have their markets. You understand? They move, and it was taking Nigerian authorities long to respond to anything that concerned them. If they had a security challenge, the nearest thing to authority they had were the gendarmes of Cameroon. So they more easily subscribe to both the oppression and protection of the gendarmes, because they know if they rely on Nigeria, and if something happens, you can quickly call a gendarme and that one will just cross over. On market days, they feel there's a way they mix. That's why Lamido who was at the national conference said, if you scatter this Nigeria, I can go to Cameroon. More than half of my community is in Cameroon. The Adamawa, this thing you're talking, a large chunk of that community is in Cameroon. You know, most of our borders were just, some people sat in Europe and just drew lines. So you don't know, sometimes same people on both sides. Yes, but we need to have that discussion with our people along the border. Say, this is the explain, and then make the presence of government felt to them. But I tell you one thing you don't know. Virtually most of the educated Nigerians that come from some of those neighboring communities have both Nigerian and Cameroonian passports. That is why they move easy. That's why you can chase some people here. Before you know, you will just find somewhere and throw the Nigerian passport and take up his Cameroonian passport. He can move and get visas and go with a Cameroonian passport. And they all move. And you know what? I actually like that many of them, even in our security organization, have been employed by us as into our security. So what are you? When you go to security, maybe let's just speaking theoretically, you go to SSS and you see there are so many people from the Gambia and Senegal answering Nigerians, but you know that not their parents, it wasn't born in Nigeria. They just migrated, just went to school, and that is the porous nature. That's what's giving us that issue. If you come down to it, but many of them do genuine business. Their businesses are tied to smuggling and illegal movement of things. But there's a way the government can regularize those businesses around the area, show them government presence, then make them believe that they stand to gain better from being on the straight side than keep fending for themselves that way. That's just, and we are not having enough of that conversation.
And it's going to be really, really, those are some of the, they appear basic, but sometimes you just wonder, how can this thing just be done
You see
that way?
a governor takes off and goes and builds a school and hospital in Niger. Meanwhile, you're the governor of Katsina. You do a road, you do everything. So you make it so easy and you don't check the thing. So they say, it's so easy. It's much easier to even go to secondary school there for you if you are in those border towns and go to market. So what does Nigeria have to offer you?
Well, the headline the other day was what? Only God can effectively police which border? Okay, well, there you go. Thank you for coming on, Steve. It's Christmas Eve, so try and get at least some good Christmas mood.
Well, we will try, but there's a bottom line. The bottom line is not missing. The economy is in bad shape, and then the COVID. Let's beg the governors, please, let's beg the governors. Let them tighten the COVID protocol a little more, because people think, I'm sorry, I come from the East. People are going eastwards, and it's burials, parties, weddings, all the things, and all this thing about face masks, it doesn't work for nobody. This Christmas is going to be a super spreader, at least for the Southeast states, I'm sure.
Wow. Well, Steve Osu is the publisher of the Nigerian Express. Thank you for coming on.
We're
back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, it's Christmas Eve, But unfortunately, some events occurred that left a sour taste in the mouth of many. And that happened in Kogi, Kaduna, and Kwara states, which led to the death of no fewer than 30 people. In Kogi, an accident involving two luxury buses, both conveying a total of 55 passengers to different destinations, claimed 15 lives after a collision. The State Commissioner of Police, who you see there, Mr. Ede Ayuba, attributed the accident to wrongful overtaking and sleeping while driving. Then he says road mishaps could have been avoided if motorists adhered to road regulation and maintained the stipulated speed limit while driving. But then, in a related development, at least 12 persons have been confirmed killed and 25 others injured after a vehicle accident along the Kaduna-Abuja highway. Eyewitnesses say the crash, which involved a trailer, was caused by a combination of speeding, road defects, driving against the direction of traffic, and loss of control. The Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security, Mr. Arwan, did visit the scene and said the trailer veered off the road pavement and overturned due to overspeeding. Then he went on to explain that 12 persons were killed in the crash, while 25 others were injured and are currently receiving treatment in the hospital. He also said that several livestock also perished in the accident. Well, certainly that is not what we want to hear or see this festive season, just Christmas Eve. But yes, we are joined by Mr. Bubi Oyeyemi, who is the Corps Marshal of Federal Road Safety Corps. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Well, your work is usually, at least it goes up notch in terms of what needs to be done during this period. But one would have thought that with COVID, you think there'll be a lot more caution. Maybe people will try to restrict themselves and not be on the roads. What kind of information do you have at the moment concerning what's happening on our roads?
Thank you very much. Good morning. We have experienced unprecedented increase in vehicular density within the last 5 days, which is very unusual. And like those clips you showed, is the data is correct. And we also experienced one road traffic crash at Jeba yesterday, in which a tanker, the brake failed and ran into a ditch, and there was the product spilled, and 6 people died, and about 30 houses burned. These are the challenges during the Yuletide season, and if you look at all these issues, it still borders on what we've been talking about on speed. The one in Kaduna was driving against the traffic. All the dividers, all the median barriers were removed overnight. Every day we blocked all this because construction is going on. And recalcitrant drivers will remove the barriers and to face oncoming traffic. This is what we've been experiencing there. The stubbornness of the drivers. And the one that happened at Zaria Giokini, it occurred at night. That was, and like you rightly said, it was fatigue. And that is why the advisory note is for people not to travel at night, because the stress involved at night is another major thing. The system, the body cannot really take this. It's a challenge that we have raised the alarm. Increase in vehicular density during this Yuletide season, and we need to just sustain this. You've said it, 15 deaths, Lokojan, 6 at Jeba, that's 21 plus 12. 21 plus 12 will give you 36. That means 3 crashes, we've lost 36 people. That's a challenge, but again, the control measures are coming up more. If we can get all those barriers on Kaduna roadblocks, all those required interventions are done, and the recalcitrant drivers don't remove them and face their normal lane. Lane indiscipline is the major problem. And I believe the other issues has to do with the security, which the security agencies have really had the level of the security on the highways, which I can confirm this. I've been on the road now for about 3 weeks. we believe that with all the measures put in place, and what we require mostly is the patient on the part of the road users. Everybody
Dr. Yemi, if you could just speak to one thing before you go into those advisories. My apologies. Before you go into those advisories, you've listed two things. Well, you've mentioned two causes of road traffic crashes. By the way, we'll come to that nomenclature later. You've talked about overspeeding. You've talked about lane indiscipline. And you also just now mentioned fatigue. In an earlier interview in the first quarter, I think you talked about overspeeding being responsible for something in the region of 50% of the accidents that are on our roads.
It has increased to 52.
Increased to 52. Wow. So
52.
How have we been able to deal with all of these, especially given, that these issues are not new? Increased from 50 to 52 now, 2% increase, that's significant. We'll come to the stats later, but how have we been able to deal with them? What else do we do other than just these advisories?
No, it's not only advisories. During the youth side season like this, we put up what we call the advisory notes, which you know. But again, we've been enforcing in the issue of speed. The commercial vehicles were directed to install the speed limiting device. And for the operational order I authorized for this period, the installation of speed limiting device is one of the critical issues. The roads are getting better. That is why. And the drivers, the level of driving, the speed is increasing. The people are not so patient again. So it's a major challenge. And that is why we, on commercial vehicles, that is the buses, the articulated vehicles, the issue of speed limiting device is very critical. And I've directed the men, if you don't have appropriate speed limiting device installed in the vehicle, they may have to rest in it. I agree with what you are saying. Then the issue is at night when the dividers are put on the way and the drivers go and remove it to force their way to be taken to face oncoming traffic, and that is part of the lawlessness. And we are battling with aggressive drivers nowadays. The assault on our personnel, the aggressiveness is unprecedented. This is still part of the fallout of the NSAS, and we are yet to get out of it. It's a major issue. The third one has to do with this fatigue. The advisory, I cannot stop people from driving at night. I can only advise. So that's why I said it's an advisory note. Fundamental rights comes in there. If I stop people from traveling at night now, I'll be taken to court for violation. But I can only advise and guide them. Like the luxury buses is a rule that you must have two drivers when we are moving on a long distance. And when this one is not done, it's a violation again. We've taken note of all this, and we continue to sustain the enforcement level. We continue to sustain the engagement level. And again, we need to, the fleet operators and the drivers themselves, they need to ensure that the compliance to the traffic rules and regulation must be paramount. I'm a bit worried when I see the figures you have reeled out. These are lives. These are lives of road users, 15 plus 6, and again plus 12. These are lives. It's not just mathematics. It's not just money. So we need to be extremely careful, and we need to get things done rightly. If road users can comply with the traffic rules and regulations, I think it'll be much better. We sustain this enforcement because now we've seen the trend. As the roads are getting better now, we need to re-strategize and refocus on the level of patrol activities.
Okay, because I was going to pick up on that part where you said the roads are getting better. Some people will think that maybe that's why they're having it. But yes, of course, we always like good roads. So, but we have to do a lot more to ensure that people don't, misuse whatever opportunities they have. But there was something that I did notice several years ago about what we see in parks. And that's why there are several facets to your job and road users. Now, in the parks, many of them, you need to see what happens. And of course, I know FRC is aware of this as well. They drive under the influence. So when they leave the parks and get to the streets, that's why you see them acting in funny ways in terms of the commercial ones. What kind of work are you doing now? Because I remember several times you have done some things about trying to see how to enforce or ensure that they don't drive under the influence. What kind of success are you having in that regard?
Well, thank you. Like I said, there's a level of improvement in respect to, as I'm talking to you now, all over the Federation, there are motor park campaigns going on. There are visitations to the fleet operators' terminals. So we've been able to a certain level enforce this issue of driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. But again, it's a sustained matter. We are getting the cooperation of NURTW, RTAN, but we need to just sustain this. It's a success story to a certain level. But the challenge we have is when they take off in the morning and they get to the next town where they eat, the issue of fatigue, when they take heavy food, it impairs the level of driving in the afternoon, because most of the crashes we record from the data you showed previously now was between 12:30 in the afternoon and 5:45 in the evening. And it's because that is when they've had a break, they've taken heavy food, and some of them, again, take some level of alcohol. So we've been able to sustain this by using the breathalyzers, but we need to just up this campaign, which we are doing. We continue to sustain this. And the union, too, must do more. They say the control of the parks has to do with the local governments. In Lagos State, we had a success story, and in some other states also we had success. The local governments must make bylaws that outlaws the sales of alcohol at motor parks. I cannot make laws. I can only enforce that by using alcoholizers. But we need more support from the local governments who are controlling the parks to ensure that alcohol is not, and drugs and alcohols are not sold. We've had joint collaboration with now Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and we're also, in the first quarter of next year, I want to bring in NAFDAC on board, again, NAFDAC and NDLEA, so that we can have, the three of us can be able to do something. The driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol has caused so many loss of lives. We need to sustain this. This campaign must be sustained, and we need the cooperation of the media to continue to drive it, to drum it into the ears of all the road users on this. We sustain these efforts. I agree to your observation. It's not down again. It's still on. It's been implemented.
Okay. Well, Doctor, these figures that we're showing for quarter one and quarter two, of course, we had very, very high figures in quarter one, as we previously showed. 3,947 road traffic crashes, ascribed to your organization. And in the second quarter, 2,080 road crashes between April and June. So my question here, with all these figures, quarter one is very high, quarter two is also significantly high. How did that happen when we were supposed to be on a lockdown?
Well, if you do comparison with that of last year, it's not frightening. It's not frightening. One, when you say a figure is high, you must have a comparative analysis. One, the country has 204,000 kilometers of road network, a vehicular density of 12 million. We have the 204,000 kilometers of road network. The federal roads about 36,000, the state roads about 34,000, and the local government roads about 129,000. And we are talking about population of 203 million. When you look at this, then it's not as frightening as you tend to raise this. But you must have a comparative. The comparative is that you look at 2019 and 2020 and what are we projecting. Then we have strategic goals for the year to reduce fatalities by 15% and to reduce crashes by 15% and fatalities by 25%. The question is, to what extent are we being able to do this compared to the other one? And again, if you are talking about the lockdown in the second quarter, that is when at the peak of COVID-19, the lockdown is, as not all the areas they experience the lockdown. It is the areas that were, and that people were still traveling despite that. They were still moving. And most of those crashes occurred at night. So that is just the explanatory note I must give you. So, but if you compare this data with that of last year, there is a slight increase of about 4%. But again, it's not as frightening. What we need to do, the roads are getting better gradually. We need to go back more to the issue of full enforcement, which we have worked on for next year now. It's going to be full enforcement. We have procured more radar guns now. We have more equalizers now. So that is what I've authorized to be deployed now to all the motor parks before the driver leaves the parks now. They must be tested at various points on the highways. There are help areas for this end of the year patrol activities. There must be periodic checks on the drivers to ensure that they're not driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. We just need, we are refocusing our strategy for next year as the roads are getting better, because from, like I told you, speed accounts for 52% from the 50% again of the principal causes of road traffic crashes. So we need to continue to up our enforcement and our intervention in controlling the speed of these commercial vehicles and trucks. The crash that occurred on Abuja-Kaduna Road was due to speed on the part of the driver, articulated vehicle, and he lost control. The one that happened at Jeba, which I also mentioned, was the issue of speed. And the third one, even the one that occurred at dead night, the 2 luxury buses that occurred at night, was also as a result of speed. And we are battling for all these articulated vehicles. One of our challenges, if you have looked at what our engagement with stakeholders, we are battling with aged vehicles. And again, most of these articulated vehicles are not designed for the purpose which they are being used for. Many of them are not designed. The tractors are not designed for it. And this is beyond the call. One, the vehicle inspection system in most of the states is not thorough. The states, the vehicle owners just pay and they just issue them roadworthiness. And you agree with me that most of these articulated vehicles, they are not fit to be on the road. But we need a systemic approach towards this. If I impound all these ones now, all these articulated vehicles, it will lead to problem, social economic challenges. But our engagement now with GMD and NPC and the Director, Department of Petroleum Resources, there's going to be auditing of these vehicles next year. And we're going to then it's been agreed by February ending, all the tankers must have installed the safety valves. There are a lot of interventions are going on, which I want to assure Nigerians and the road users that before the end of first quarter next year, there'll be a lot of improvement. And I must also thank Mr. President for his approval in providing additional funds for us to procure more equipment to tackle this, which all these things will materialize in the first quarter of next year.
Those were some of the concerns people have concerning whether you succeed or not. They thought, for instance, if you arrest vehicles that were or trucks that are not latched because of who might own it, they could call someone somewhere and then they make your work a lot difficult. And those are the bottlenecks that people anticipated that you were going to face. What are you going to do in that regard?
If you're talking about unlatched containers, you should commend us for the efforts made so far. You remember the series of crashes involving unlatched containers in the third quarter of this year and the prompt action the court took, especially with the Lagos State government, joint efforts. Now, I just left Lagos over the weekend. At least all the containers I saw were properly latched. It's an improvement because with joint efforts with MPA, it's compulsory now before you leave the ports to latch the containers. And I can say this is a success story too. Channels was involved in that study. And I can't tell you now that we've tried on this, we've sustained this. And there is a special team at the former Lagos end of the toll gate to ensure that any articulated vehicle, those flatbed trailers that the containers are not latched, will not be allowed to move. And we've sustained this. What you should look at is the cause should sustain the efforts, all these strategies we have put in place. And I want to assure Nigerians that there's no going back on them. The issue of aged trucks, they must leave the road by next year. On large containers, we've sustained these efforts. The most important thing is that we must not put our eyes off it. Then the issue of speed limiting device on commercial vehicles, these are fundamental issues. That was one of the first things Mr. President approved when he came on board. That was the first thing he approved because he's an apostle of road safety and he has been monitoring this. And the other issue, the issue of sales of drugs and alcohol, we further compel the local government to ban this. All the 774 local governments must make the bylaws. Then the critical one we are battling with now is the issue of markets along the highways. The crash that occurred at Akumba in which the driver lost control, brake failure, and crushed people, in which about 16 people died. This was also another challenge. The resolution of the National Council on Works is that all markets must leave the right of way. And we are going to work on this with the various federal controllers of works and give the ultimatum for them. Ditto, the state governments too must enforce the relocation of all the markets by the roadsides. It's causing, apart from traffic challenges, the threat to safety of lives and properties is a fundamental issue we must address. The first quarter of 2021 is loaded with a lot of enforcements and activities of the Corps. This, I want to assure that we are up to the task.
You still have to say about that 2021 going forward, but before we get to that one, each time you've talked about these road crashes, you've talked about commercial vehicles, articulated vehicles, and from those figures that we gave earlier, the first quarter and the second quarter, what's the percentage involvement of private vehicles?
Well, for private vehicles, I cannot calculate it now. It's not as high. But during the Yuletide season like this, that is when we have more private vehicles involved in road traffic crashes. For the normal routine periods, there's not much problem involving private vehicles. Why during the Yuletide season is because a lot of private vehicles are put on the road. Most private drivers are not used to long distance driving. They are not used to fatigue sets in.
Just
in the urban areas, you drive for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
3 minutes, then you get a traffic light, school runs. But on the highways, the private drivers, so the last year I raised this issue, more private vehicles were involved in crashes than commercial. And that is why we've raised the level of campaign that even if you want to travel, you can go to some of these professional offices where you can get drivers. The court to also offer to assist with drivers for a fee.
Let me quickly squeeze this in before we sign out on this segment. The decade of action ends this year, 2011 to 2020. What's the level of our success in this quarter, and what do we do going forward?
The first UN decade of action for road safety 2011 to 2020 ended on the 11th of May 2020. Then on the 18th of August, the UN General Assembly also endorsed the second UN decade of action 2021 to 2030. I think Nigeria has submitted its report. I think we've been able to achieve a lot of things. And when you look at it, the question is, globally, there's a problem. At the beginning of the UN decade of action in 2011, the baseline for fatalities was 1.2 million globally, not in Nigeria. By the time we finished the UN decade of action, the fatalities has increased to 1.35 million globally. So Nigeria has also taken its own share from this. So the issue is that, what I can say as per Nigeria is that at the 3 tiers of government, the level of awareness of road traffic administration and management has been raised to the highest level, to the extent that the Vice President of Federal Republic of Nigeria is the chairman of the National Road Safety Advisory Council. If there has not been the government intervention in the last decade, the last 10 years, this will not be the story. I can tell you the level of government intervention has saved so many lives as per the efforts of member nations in respect of this. And the government, again, as per the UN conventions that are related to road safety, Mr. President has ceded to all this, and they were all deposited on the 27th of October 2018. These are all we've done well as a nation, and even other African countries are emulating Nigeria, but we can still do more. And the government is doing more now, the intervention fund being provided now to further see to the fact that the road traffic crashes is brought to an acceptable level. We just have to sustain this campaign. We have to sustain this enforcement. We have to sustain more initiatives in bringing down the road traffic crashes.
All right, then we do thank you for your time, and all the best.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Right. Thank you. We're back in a moment. Join us again. Welcome back. Yes, it's still Christmas Eve. I like to drum that into my head such that afterwards, you can get back out there with your friends and family and do what you have to do. But now we're talking about COVID. And we've got Dr. Chikwe Hekwazu, the DG of NCDC, joining us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, compliments of the season, by the way.
Good morning.
Okay, so
thank you very much.
In consideration of in consideration of where we are at the moment with COVID and how we're trying to ensure things are done properly, what is your greatest concern now?
Thank you, Chamberlain, and good morning. Hi, Ayo. My greatest concern, I would say, I just listened to my brother, the Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps, and I think that the risk perception around the challenge that we face on viruses is so difficult. If your house is on fire or there's a fire somewhere, you can see it, and Nigerians will understand the risk they face by going towards the fire. If there's an incident, a road traffic accident, people perceive that risk because they can visualize it. If you hear that there's been a criminal activity somewhere on a road, you can visualize what it means. But for us, it's been so difficult narrating to Nigerians the risk they have to perceive with a small thing called the virus that nobody can see, and therefore no one can really understand the gravity of the risk that they face. And therefore it's much easier to rationalize it or to put it into the box of, do I believe or don't I believe that this is real? So as we come to the end of the year, and as I reflect on the very difficult year we've had as a country, again, we will try to raise awareness of Nigerians of this global threat that we're facing, caused by a new virus, and the harm it has caused our country, its people, and our economy, not just here in Nigeria, but globally, and how we can think of how to mitigate this risk collectively, because you can only pool forces, join forces to fight a risk where you believe there's one. So again, this is our challenge this Christmas period, New Year's period, and even into the next year, is to really find a narrative that will convince Nigerians that this is an existential threat. And once that is done, I think we can mobilize ourselves to meet that challenge. But, again, we will try, as we've been doing throughout the year, to demonstrate the risk that we face, and therefore build with Nigerians the defense structures that we need. This is not something that can come out of NCDC or out of the Presidential Task Force. We can only succeed in this if we collectively have a single narrative of the risks that we face and how we can confront.
Well, Doctor, something that you have said, and which a good number of people have also alluded to, is risk communication. We've had a risk communication officer here in the studio in the course of this year talking about the same COVID-19. And it'll seem that that's where the major challenge is. What are these specific issues? What are the things that people are missing? Maybe I can hazard a kind of suggestion, or rather, is it a scenario? When we had a conversation with a consultant, Dr. Alero Roberts, her opinion, when I asked the question, could it be that because we have very, very low fatality rate for this disease, that's making people to say, maybe it's not that serious, maybe it's not as difficult, maybe it's not as bad as it looks. Could this be part of the challenges of the risk communication?
Therein lies our challenge, is do we want to see bodies lying on the roads before we understand the severity of the illness that we face? This is a numbers game. the more cases you have, the more severe cases you have, and the higher your risk of death. Every day, Nigerians watch TV, those that can afford the channels streaming live from other countries in the world, and we see the number of deaths happening in those countries, despite their very sophisticated health care infrastructure. So we just can't afford to get to those numbers, because the mortality rate in Nigeria will be a lot higher because of the deficits that we know we have in our healthcare provision infrastructure. So this is the singular reason why we are having so much on prevention, because our healthcare system, our healthcare capabilities at federal, state, and local level will just not be able to handle the cases in their numbers as we're seeing in other countries. We're working very hard to improve on this. The federal government is doing so, but these things take time. So we don't want to get to that stage, but it's almost like between a rock and a hard place. And I agree with my dear friend Alero, who made that, got to that conclusion. But having said that, Ayo, the thing is that it's Nigeria, obviously, when we present that data for the country, this is an average across our 200 million people. If you do the numbers as a part of the population in just Lagos or FCT, the states with the higher burden of cases, you will realize the impact of this on lives of people. It's been catastrophic. And that is why also sometimes I think the risk awareness is higher in those states where they've had a higher burden of infection so far. So we want to prevent this from spreading across the country, and which is why we've started a campaign called Celebrate Responsibly towards this end of the year, just to remind people of the collective responsibility that we have, even if this is the end of the year and people are tired from a very difficult year, to hold on just a little bit more, call on our best intentions, but also call on local leaders, leaders of churches, leaders of families, leaders of organizations, to hold each other accountable for these things and to really enforce this regulation, self-regulatory behavioral changes that we need to do to prevent transmission.
Well, Doctor, we have been talking to people over the past, how many months now? We have been talking to people, and it doesn't seem, to be getting there. But specifically speaking, of course, you were there when the chairman of PTF COVID-19 spoke and said that there is that conversation with states. And so the question then is, what kind of conversations are you having with the states in terms of their communication and especially the enforcement? In Lagos, that has begun. There was just one day they arrested about 500 people for not wearing the non-pharmaceutical prevention items that have been provided, that have been prescribed by the NCDC and other authorities at that level. So what kind of conversations are you having with the states to ensure that we can sustain the interventions that you have proposed to them?
So thank you. Right after that event where the chairman of the Presidential Task Force spoke, we had a meeting that evening with a subcommittee of the National Economic Council made up of a select group of governors with whom we interface. And that point was made very strongly to the governors. And in fact, Their Excellencies, the governors of most of the states in Nigeria, really are taking this seriously. Many of them, unfortunately, have been infected themselves. So they are taking this seriously. And you alluded to the critical steps now taken by His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State. The same has happened in the Federal Capital Territory, and even in Kaduna has taken very stringent measures. Over the past few months, we've really tried, considering the economic realities of our time, the very difficult time this has been for people, for small businesses, and try to give responsibilities to individuals to make these decisions and to carry out this action. But as we've gone into this second wave, we've found that it's not enough. Many of us are simply for some reason, not strong enough to do these things and do it consistently. We let go, when you say, yes, I'll distance, but the next thing you get an invitation and there's a draw to attend that particular wedding. And it's that one time that we let down our guard and allow ourselves then to go for that one wedding that we then get infected. And really, that's the risk that we're facing. Many people are getting infected from small gatherings of people coming together in social events for all sorts of reasons. So what we have done is ask the state government, please, enforce some of these measures with where you have the you're able to around event centers, around restaurants, so that we minimize the appeal for individuals to make these decisions, and we have the decisions made for them, especially at this time of the year where there's the natural increase in events like that, and so that we don't go into 2021 with a full-blown crisis. And that's really what we're trying to achieve. Because if we don't do this, there's no other way of keeping our economy open. What we're doing is really a measure to prevent the use of harder tools, to prevent more comprehensive tools being used. So we're trying to say, listen, can we mitigate the risk by doing these things here and there? Yes, it will be painful for some small businesses, but this is the only way you can stay open in the long run. And this is something we've now, Their Excellencies, the governors of many states across the country, are doing with different levels of implementation efficiency, but definitely, I think they've all come to realize that there's simply no other way. We've got to enforce this at the state level. That's where the instruments of government allow for enforcement to happen.
Well, speaking about states, we'd like you to listen to this.
And healthcare service delivery, worth just 4.7 billion. Now, let's extrapolate. If we are going to expend 540 billion in the purchase of vaccine, let me just simply give you this analysis. In Kogi State today, we are building a multi-billion naira hospital that is going to have every equipment you can ever think of in terms of medical and healthcare service delivery, worth just 4.7 billion. Now, let's extrapolate. If we are going to spend 10 billion naira per health institution that will cater for a more deadly disease, not COVID-19 that has 99.9 chances of recovery rate, a more deadly disease that are killing every day, if we expend just 10 billion only, and 10 billion put in Nigerian factor, let me put it that way, and taxes, we are going to have 54 of such. Every state power will have one each. FCT can have up to 2, Lagos can have up to 2, Kano can have up to 2, and some other major cities can have up to 2. No disease we will not be able to cure in this country. From CBN, analysis sometimes back, 3.5 trillion expended so far on COVID and COVID-related matters. We don't need to have gone through that route. In one of these, our sessions in the National Economic Council meeting, there was this issue that came up regarding infrastructure, road infrastructure in the country. I'm sure you know Mr. President care about Nigerians so much that he continued to emphasize on infrastructure building of infrastructure, and he was doing much within the little resources available to him. But in order to take it further and faster, we suggested that a committee be set up under the leadership of Governor Nasir Ahmed El-Rufai, and this committee did a wonderful job. This committee comprises of some governors, including CBN themselves. And they came up with just a report that's, in summary, that requires only 2 billion only to fix major commercially viable roads in the country.
Well, it appears it doesn't subscribe to the single narrative, intention, or desire that you had initially highlighted to ensure we pull on the same page. How do you progress from that?
So thanks, Chamberlain. You know, my role as the leader of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control is not to join debate in terms of resource allocation at the federal and state level. That's the responsibility of our elected leaders. And my role is to advise them on a public health and health security threat, both in Nigeria and globally. We've seen currently the largest economy in the world, literally fighting with this virus, has over 300,000 deaths so far. Nothing makes them better than us, right? So that we're not having the number of deaths today in Nigeria doesn't mean we will not have them tomorrow if we don't do what is necessary to prevent that. As far as I understand, the numbers quoted there for the vaccination efforts are not in sync with my understanding of what will be necessary in the next few months. This is really not my area of responsibility, so I won't get into the details. But ultimately, my view on this is you can't enjoy infrastructure if you're not alive. You cannot go on great roads. You can't live in beautiful buildings. You can't even enjoy the facilities in a great hospital if you are not alive. So how do we prevent illness? The focus on the work that we do in public health, and which is a globally accepted norm, is that prevention is by far better and by far cheaper than any curative effort. So our responsibility here is to prevent as many Nigerians as possible from getting this illness. And that's what I am completely 100% focused on. Every Nigerian across every state in Nigeria, working with their excellencies, the governors of all the states. And this is our role. This is what we'll continue to do. And the responsibility for a resource allocation will remain with our elected leaders as they're elected to do.
So, speaking about the vaccine, is it your office that is going to coordinate in terms of when they receive, and what are the considerations? Because you have so many people yesterday who told us, whoa, I'm not sure I'm going to take this vaccine, even if it arrives here. What's the consideration?
First thing, let me answer your second question. You know, if there's one vaccine that arrives in Nigeria and that's the only thing I have to do, I will take it. You know, this is really an existential question. The agency responsible for delivery of these vaccines is the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Of course, the Presidential Task Force will provide the leadership for this activity like it does for all of us, together with the Federal Ministry of Health and the Honorable Minister of Health. You know, I think the question of whether we will accept the vaccine is an important one. And we're going to work very hard to educate all Nigerians on the benefits of this vaccine. Listen, Chamberlain, no medical intervention, not one, has saved more lives since the beginning of mankind than vaccination. So no great hospital, no surgery, no medicine, not even antibiotics has saved more lives than vaccines. The vaccines are simply the miracle of medicine that has saved so many people, prevented illness, and today continues to prevent illness. We've just celebrated, in between this pandemic, the elimination of polio in Nigeria and in the rest of the continent. Just 2 countries now in the world have wild polio virus circulating. We completely eliminated smallpox through the efforts of humans, so through vaccination efforts. So vaccines are a simple miracle. And the work done by scientists to lead on the development of a vaccine in 10 months, you know, is on the realms of science fiction. So we're going to work very hard to educate Nigerians on the benefits of vaccines, the opportunity it gives us to return to our lives, our normal lives. And that's what's going on around the country right now. NPHCD is leading on ensuring that we have the logistics for distribution, we have the leadership at the state level to ensure that we understand how, where, and through which resources these vaccines will be delivered to our people, and also planning a communications effort to make sure that people understand. My final point on this, Chamberlain, is to be honest, by the time we get this vaccine, sometime in the first quarter of next year, there'll be hundreds of millions of people that would already have received this vaccine. And so, there's a lot of, there are a lot of narratives about possible harm. If there's anyone that's still skeptical in March, April, he would look around the world and see people that have received the vaccine and then are beginning to return to life as normal. And really, this is where we want to focus our efforts now. This year, 2020, has really been the year of coronavirus, unfortunately. We want to make 2021 the year of delivery an effective vaccine rollout in Nigeria. And I'm absolutely confident in the leadership of the health sector, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and the Presidential Task Force in leading us through that.
While I do not wish to be a downer on this, Dr. Hikazu, you would remember that, even though we celebrate that we do not have poliomyelitis in Nigeria anymore, wild poliovirus, as you said, if we remember how long it took us to persuade everyone to take this, this polio vaccine, we know that our work is cut out for us. Just as you have said, Dr. Ali also said the same thing yesterday, that the major challenge would be persuading people. What are the challenges you foresee about persuading people to take these vaccines, and how are we approaching the communication?
You're absolutely right that our work is cut out for us. And we have to be proactive about this. We have to really explain and engage with Nigerians, understand their fears, understand their anxieties, and respond to them. Right now, all around the world, the most famous pictures circulating are of people getting this vaccine. The emotion I feel the most is a desire to be in that position, to have this shot of life given to me in my hand. So our responsibility collectively, not just as leaders of the public health response in Nigeria, but all leaders, religious, cultural, media leaders, we have to collectively use our voice intelligently in educating the public. Let me say one thing about the work you do, Ayo. In the media, when you have let's say an election, you often have to bring in, people from both sides of an argument to make a case to the public, because you have a responsibility for fairness. I think in science, there's a responsibility to air, what is scientifically accurate and reasonable, and be on the side of science in communicating to people on what we know works for them. So I'm looking forward to working with you. Our leaders are looking forward to doing the same thing, to really use the knowledge that we have responsibly and educate people responsibly on the benefits of vaccination, not just for health. Health is the primary outcome, but on our economy, on our way of life, on returning. Nobody wants to tell people not to travel for Christmas. I want next year to go back to living a normal life. And this is our license. This is our one opportunity to return to that. If not, as hard as we try with these non-pharmaceutical interventions, the masking, the distancing, as hard as we try, we can mitigate the impact, we can reduce transmission, but we will not be able to eliminate this virus without the vaccine. It's very unlikely that we can do that. We've seen in many countries that thought, even island countries that thought that they had gotten beyond this, see reintroductions happening and circulation happening again. So we absolutely need this vaccine next year. And it's the collective will of government to do everything possible to get as many vaccines into this country and get it into the arms of Nigerians. Because It's only when people actually get vaccinated, not by the vaccines, not the vaccines being procured. It's actually when we get people vaccinated that we have a chance of getting ahead of this difficult virus.
All right, then, we do thank you for your time this morning, Dr. Chikwe Hekwazu, DG of NCDC.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's take a look at this email. It comes through from Mrs. Okoji, and she's talking about NCC, NIN, and related matters. It's a long one, so just be patient. She says, I had obtained my NIN a while ago. A while back, I had ported my line from MTN to Etisalat. Yesterday, I went to my subscriber's office, that's Etisalat, to link my phone to my NIN, only to be told that my number was not registered. I queried why this was so, as it was their responsibility to register me. Following my porting to them, they said it wasn't a requirement of NCC at the time. I offered to go back to MTN, but was told MTN will no longer have my initial registration, having ported, and that since it was not a requirement at that time for ported numbers to be registered afresh, there was nothing they could do until the embargo on registrations was lifted. The danger is that a number of ported people will lose their lines if the embargo is not likely lifted before the deadline. This is absolute confusion and wrong. Please interrogate these NCC people so that they could look into this scenario. That's what Mrs. Okoje.
Well, one of several issues a good number of people have to contend about this matter.
Yeah, so there you go. That's the show today. So don't forget to send us your messages. We'll have some pictures to you.
Yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow. Compliments of the season. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Let me join in saying, celebrate responsibly.